All right, everybody, we're back on Play It Forward with Corbin Weitenhagen, filmmaker, writer, director. Corbin, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're going to be talking about No Excuse Needed. And before we do, can you introduce yourself a little bit, your background?
I started off with always a passion in storytelling. I don't know if it started off with specifically filmmaking, but it kind of started off with me just like writing scripts, having no idea how to write scripts. Not that there's a right way, but it was just like opening up my Google Doc and writing like my friends into scripts. They always say is this like, avoid putting like like people you actually know in scripts, but it's kind of funny because I started off that way. When you put someone's real name in there, it's like, whoa, is this what you actually think of them? You know, it's
Yeah,
a different ball game, but I
that's
actually kind of
awesome.
started off like that. Through there, I kind of like I had baseball was like a huge part of my life. So started off playing baseball a lot. And throughout that, I never really was uh, never really gave me opportunity to do storytelling. So I think just right out of high school, I was like, all right, it's got to be baseball or it's got to be something else. And it was a very scary time because I'm like, well, I just did baseball my whole life. So I hope it's something else. I hope if I do pull the plug on baseball, am I just gonna forever not have the thing that I like spent my whole life like practicing at? And that's a pretty scary place to be. Immediately, I took a film class at Shoreline Community College, and I was like, oh, thank God I made this decision. Because it's like I love baseball, but I don't love it as much as I do film.
Wow.
I'll root for the Mariners, and that's enough for me.
Cool. That's cool.
Um,
So it's a real passion point for you, and you've had it early on, and you came to it very genuinely through, the love of storytelling. And I think
Definitely.
a lot of people can relate to that, especially a lot of writer directors out there. That's, how people get into filmmaking to make their own stuff and tell their own stories. In terms of this story, No Excuse Needed. Can you set it up for us?
Going back to just when I first started going to Shoreline, learning about film. I ended up writing a bunch of things that I would cleverly make honest, if that makes sense. I would try to make things in an honest way, but I would constantly find myself putting myself in a box of like this kind of just like feels like a movie, if that makes sense, and that makes it dishonest. So it was like I was trying to make a good movie and not trying to get something off my chest. And
Mm.
I learned it got to a point where it's like you actually it's not as much of a decision to finally make something honest, I think. I think it just gets to a point in your life where you're just like staring at your ceiling at night and you're like, well, it's got to happen. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm gonna do, you know? And No Excuse Needed was the first script where I got to that point in my life where I was like, I just got to get this off my chest because I feel like I've tried to put it into words, but it's very clear that I can't. So whether that's I'm incapable of doing that or if it's literally impossible, that's beside the point. But the point was I had to do it. And so then came No Excuse Needed as something about myself I wasn't the most fond of, but I was able to uh, find some solace in the script and just making the film. I found some solace in it and some comfort in knowing that I was able to communicate kind of who I am and without having to force it into words, if that makes sense.
That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing it. It totally makes sense, and it's such a great intro. So I'll set the story up, and you fill it in
Yeah.
if I miss anything. So the story is about what I think you would call an asshole, and the definition of this guy, this main character who's an asshole, seems like to take place in a college town or a college sort of point in his development. It starts off where he's at a party and he's drunk, and seemingly he's drunk again, and he's drunk to the point of throwing up, and there's this refrain that's kind of set up very early on about repeatedly making the same mistake, making the same thing over and over again. So then you get cut from there in this kind of party scene to like the day-to-day life of this character. And he goes out on this date, and he's maybe he's distracted. He takes her out to a bar, and she doesn't drink, and he does all these sorts of things that would make it seem like he's not paying attention. And again, he's kind of repeating. He's seemingly sensitive, but also insensitive character, and so this girl kind of takes pity on him, and she says, seemingly maybe takes pity on him, maybe she likes him, maybe both, and she says, "Hey." do you want to go to this meeting? It's I've got therapy tomorrow. I can't see you again, but if you want to come with me, you can come. You seem to need it. So he goes to this therapy with her and he thinks it's some sort of AA thing, and it turns out to be AA, but it's called Assholes Anonymous. And it's, the way he came to it, he had all these judgments about, these people have sort of a reasonable excuses or real legitimate reasons of why they're struggling in life. There's addiction. There's a lack of family structure. There's
The passing of Abby's dad, everyone's there
the
for some
passing of the other
real
lead
suffering.
character's father. Yeah, loss. So these like real things that happen in life that are huge hurdles for most many people. And then he has no real good reason. He's just kind of this character that has this general
Yeah.
malaise about him, and it seems to be the what you've painted for me is the condition of being alive, the human condition, the sloth, greed, gluttony, kind of those points of inertia that Jesus, Buddha, all these people talked about in a way of the human condition and how to move beyond it to a greater state of awareness. And then through this meeting, through this process, he finds some direction.
Mm.
You know,
Hmm.
uh there's no necessarily solution, but he finds something through at the end of the film. We're ending on lines like, who said you need an excuse to feel shitty?
Hmm.
We all are struggling. There's a line, I just struggle to stay present. So this present-minded awareness, which is so difficult. I mean, again, I mentioned the Buddha earlier. This is the present-minded foundation of so much of Eastern philosophy so that we can really feel alive, right? And we have
Hmm.
such a hard time feeling alive so often, especially with all the distracted media devices that we have.
Hmm.
I would say significantly younger than I am. You've grown up with cell phone devices in a much more intimate way than I did. So how'd I do in terms of the narrative?
I love listening to people's interpretations and also just like what they get from it. It's like the fact that it's just like I made no excuse needed, and then you started talking about Buddha and how it can relate to the film is just like this is awesome, and it's the whole point of why I make all this is this like hearing everyone have their own or come up with ways to interpret film and how it relates to their life because it's like at the end of the day, everyone has their own life and it's always gonna dictate how they take a film. Thank God for that, number one. But it's also like, well, does that mean no one's ever gonna get what I'm trying to say in my film? And it's like, well, no. It's just you can't control how people take it because they're always going to the theater or they're always watching it in a different place with a different sense of mind, with a different day that maybe they had a bad day, maybe they didn't, whatever it may be. And that's kind of like the most freeing thing is because it's like now you get to make something and everyone gets to take what they need from it or maybe what they want.
Well, that definitely agree with all that. And, objectively speaking, in terms of the script and the narrative
Mhm.
arc, I really want to capture in the initial kind of moments of our conversation for the audience that hasn't seen it. I just want to paint an objective picture, you know,
Yeah.
of how the film was shot and made and how the story was structured. So, did I do a decent job of that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it sounded really good to me. Yeah. I
Okay.
really do. I'm just like, yeah, that's right on. So,
Okay. So that said, where did this narrative, just narrative meaning storyline, where did that live in your own life? What experience did you have that you wanted to explore to make you better understand your own experience?
well, for my own experience was I realized that I struggled to have like a sense of wanting to like listen to people, and that's why I assumed I was an asshole. And I think that is kind of what makes you an asshole. But not in the sense of like an irredeemable asshole. I think you're only an asshole if you feel like if you don't realize that you're not intentionally not listening to people. And being as young as I was, 3 years ago, I'm still super young, but like 3 years ago, especially, I was learning about just like, oh, so it actually takes effort to listen to people. Realizing that and realizing I have to put in effort to understand what someone's saying. It's not something that I just naturally can do. It's actually not natural. It's actually not human. It's actually human to do everything for yourself. And what is the benefit of me? I don't care about you. What's the benefit of me? You know, and maybe for others it's different. More power to you. For me, it's not. It takes an abundance of effort to get myself to a place where I'm like, you're all that matters right now. Let me listen to you. That's kind of why I ended up putting that into this script, is because it was the best way for me to show people and tell people, like, I promise I'm trying to listen to you. And it's just really hard for me. And I don't know why, but I'm trying to figure it out.
That's
That's kind of
incredible, man.
where
That's
that
awesome.
goes in. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's
Yeah.
such a great awareness to have as a at any point in time in one's lifetime to come to that point and to value that, hey, I want to be someone who listens. I want to be someone who's sympathetic and not self-centered. And I'm going to put effort into doing that. And now that you've
Right.
gained this kind of you created this film, man. It's like a
Yeah.
thesis statement. It's a thesis work. It's a higher level scholarly project that you've done here. And you wrote it, you directed it, and I'm sure you sat in on the edit plenty. And now you're on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Now you're doing an amazing job of listening here. We spoke prior. I did not strike me as somebody who had a hard time listening. I mean, even through this media, I can see your eyes, man.
I
I'm looking at your
appreciate
eyes.
that.
They're there, you're
Yeah.
there.
Hmm.
So what did you learn?
Well, I mean, just like Steven did at the end, was this like Jack Spangler ended up playing him. Gosh, he's like one of my best friends, and I love playing tennis with him. He gets so competitive, and he's honestly like my one of my favorite actors to work with, because he will just we'll get into it. So he's so passionate. He was so passionate for Steven. His first time, it might have been his second time acting, and he had 7 monologues in that script. And a conversation we'd always have is this like he knew everyone always like, okay, well, what happens at the end? Because it looks like he's just listening to someone. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay. And then, but for Jack, me and him talking about it, for him, he immediately clicked. He's just like, oh yeah, it is hard to listen to someone. I'm so glad at the end he just listens to someone. And he's like, I'm so glad it's not like a big thing of like a big, like, he gets up and like tells everyone like how to listen, like this is a good thing. He just does it. And it honestly, it's like throughout the whole film, I watch it and I'm always just like, is this guy ever just gonna shut up? And it finally gets to that point where you get the first time I think in the whole film, for like longer than a minute, you get him not saying anything. And it is so therapeutic. It really like the shift at the end when everything's dark and all that matters is that person in front of him. So why would we? And then Nikki Smith is such an amazing DP. He asked me the question eventually. He's like, why are we even showing everything else? If all that matters, why don't we just show him? Why don't we just show the guy he's listening to? Like, why not? Why just, if there's no distractions, let's just literally not put any distractions, only him and Steven. Uh, and we ended up doing that, and thank God it did, because it's like not only is Jack's performance of Steven just like with the little eyebrow twitch at the end and the simple like, oh, this is what it's like to listen. I enjoy this. Like this is such a good thing. It's so surprising to him, and it just like for me, it was so surprising to me to like go to bed at night when I started just like trying my best to listen to people and just genuinely put an effort in that regard. And it was just like I had no idea. It wasn't that I was like intentionally not doing it. It's just I had no idea that it took effort in the first place to listen to people. And for him at the end to finally do it, he's just like zen.
I love that. And so that raises a few follow-up points. One is like, so the character, it's like in the way he made the shift to be able to listen by venting. He finally vented in a way that it wasn't like superficial. He kind of really vented and expressed a deep sense of self. And then he was able
Yeah.
to move beyond that. Is how do we get to that place? How do we listen? How did you listen? And why is it important?
I found an importance to listen to people with, I mean, my girlfriend called just before this interview, and I'm just always just like, all right, I got to put everything on pause. Hello, I love her so much. And I got to a point where, in being such a noob to our relationship, I didn't know like what it took in a relationship and what it took to make sacrifices for someone. But like, that's the whole idea is even if you are doing something really important like this interview, it's like at the end of the day, if she calls, I got to pick up. So I made that decision for her. Like we were just a few months in our relationship, and we clicked so quickly, and we were able to like talk so deeply about how to connect with one another. And I think she was the person in my life that when she came in to my life, she was the person where I was like, okay, I want to listen to you. I want to be that person that's like there for you and you can vent to, or whatever you need from me to listen. Let's make that happen. So for my life, meeting my girlfriend, finding someone that was worth doing that for. Not to say that there wasn't people in my life before that wasn't worth doing that for. It's just I didn't realize how worth they were doing it for. So now that I started, listening and talking with my girlfriend and, just communicating. And I was like, well, why stop here? Why not do that for everyone else? It's not on a relationship level, obviously. And
So what I'm hearing
um,
is to be able to live and to be able to love fully,
mhm.
it takes listening.
Yeah, for a lot of
And
people, I think that's like, well, yeah. But for me, it wasn't like a dumb moment. It was something for me that was just like didn't even click in my brain. I grew up playing baseball and it was just like, all right, go hit the track. Why? Did you just ask me why? Go hit the track, Okay, yes, sir, All I knew was just like, all right, I'm gonna do what you say because you have power over me and you're the coach. So like when I would apply that to like my life, it wasn't like that. The only people I was listening to were my mentors and people in a higher prestige, and whether it was education, work, whatever it was, right? But I got to a point where I was just like, I'm now at a point where it's like it doesn't matter what prestige they're at. If it's people that are around me, they deserve to be listened to just as they listen to me. Just because they're human is enough reason to listen to people.
agreed. Definitely venture to say that the more capable we are of listening to others, the more capable we are of listening to what's inside ourselves,
Yeah.
redefining who we are and how we understand ourselves and how we understand our life experience. How do we stop, drop, and listen?
It wasn't easy for me, I can say that. But to do it is if someone's trying to talk to you, I think it's your obligation to either A, communicate, now's not a good time. Let's talk in a little bit here. Right now I'm focused on this. Or pause whatever you're doing and actually give them your full attention. And sometimes I know that can be really hard. I mean, we all have 4 million things going on, but you're just going to have to trust the person that's getting your attention has a really good reason of doing so.
And for a guy who's grown up, like, when did you get your cell phone?
I ended up, I think 6th grade,
In
7th
sixth
grade.
grade.
Yeah, 6th grade, 7th grade. Yeah. I mean, once we hit
Like
middle
full
school, I was
deal?
walking around
Like,
there like, you need this in case trouble happens.
wait, like, did you have like one that was totally, you had a smartphone in sixth grade?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
go
I'm 23.
online, do whatever, no holds barred.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and you're, post college age now.
Yeah. Just
So,
graduated.
so how do you think that affects your generation?
Having such easy access to technology at such a young age.
The distractibility of the kind of technology that you had access to.
Yeah, having such easy access to technology not only affects, but it actually completely changes how a generation goes through life. And I forget that when my dad's asking for help to merge two videos, it's obvious to me, but it's not obvious to him. It's obvious to people to listen to each other, but it's not obvious to me.
Well, that's
You
kind of
know?
what I'm saying. It's like it's amazing how that plays into this conversation. I mean, I don't think you're
Yeah.
alone, and I think, my generation and beyond, older, younger, whatever, everybody's got like can relate to this and can relate to
Yeah.
the story and being selfish and not and being present, and the conversation still stands. And on top of that, being a 20-something-year-old, having grown up with a cell phone already like half your
Yeah.
life, and then like having a attention span that's like regulated by a cell phone,
Yeah.
you know, that adds a whole nother flavor to the conversation and the obstacle that you face that I
Yeah.
don't. Corbin Weitenhagen, filmmaker, writer, director. The film is no excuse needed. Corbin, thank you for sharing your story and your film, and I appreciate you being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you.